I mean, I never did that. Did you just make that up? Says the mother to the daughter. This whole family is imagined to begin with. Let's try to make believe with our hands. Work the lies into a paste-like consistency. Coat the eyelids with the residue of denial. Fabricated means cut from the same cloth as your father. Falsify, calcified bones in the belly of an imposter. In hard times, we rely on the promise of things to come. Have your way with me, truth said in surrender. Memory, hastily unbuttoning soiled trousers. I watch my stepmother empty the prayer beads of a pomegranate into a Tupperware container for my father. I was offered a few just to try, to practice swallowing requests for God, undressed of his leathery red skin. I had heard they were good for liver health, rich in antioxidants. They sometimes call them jewels of winter. Funny how that summer my dad developed cancer. My mother likes to tell the story of how she ate a bratwurst right before I was born. Aller Afghan Ichwer translates to all beginnings are hard. As a teething child, she would glide her finger against the inside of my mouth, rubbing my back molars gently with oil of cloves. She did this naturally to make the aching stop. She does it now, again, this time with feeling. It's hard having a poet in the family, a tortured artist of a daughter who won't let sleeping dogs lie. There I go digging up the trauma again. I carve initials into the sorry family tree, lick the pussy sap to gather inspiration. The more personal you make the poem, the more universal it becomes. A sacrifice of secrets must be made. Each sonnet a version of selling out. The umbilical cord was the lanyard holding a shiny black whistle in tow. My first sound was more a blow than a cry. There were some things we just didn't talk about. Before setting feet on dry land, I wiped my feet on my mother's lips. I tried to string along the nonsense of irreverence only to have my rope cut short. Truth-telling is a capital offense in all 50 states of my personhood, some still mourning the loss of the Confederacy. A child is a repeat offender in the sense that they are an off-base replica, not exactly what we had in mind. Breaking the mold is directed towards misbehaving offspring. It's the equivalent of the sign reading, "You break, you buy," hanging in every aisle of the town's antique shop. A glass falls from the shelf inside a man when they first hear their baby scream. Water is not the only thing that breaks in a woman when an island forces its way into being. I am not sure that women are the future of man, nor sure how my stomach will forsake me. The origins of my selfishness were clear. I came into this world self-serving. The kid that always wanted seconds before finishing their first plate, I called dibs on my mother's blanched womb. I bit my tongue when asked my favorite color. I was born a rat. A pin the tattletale snitch to the donkey bearing evidence of things done in private. The dark parts of me wrote secret letters, but in this house all the walls have my mouth. The ocean spits up what it cannot digest. Come current or sea drag on. I French braid the gills of the shark I ride bareback, come seahorse or atlas moth. The sea fishes out those scared of being still, come monster or circumcised turnips. Some animals only think with their mouths, come manatee or willpower. Around 1 in 1,000 sea turtles will survive to adulthood, come abstraction or lived reality. The Argonaut octopus detaches its penis, come amen, or a man of the cloth. For a definition of semen, see men. For the second coming, see deliverance. He comes twice and then things fall apart. The center cannot hold. See world riptide in two, an Adam's apple afloat. What's eating you? A fruitful exercise in world building. Nether regions ablaze, fire drills come before the flood. Drown your troubles in quid pro quo, grilled calamari for squid, tentacles del mar, looping rings around a woman's nude body, blanketed in foam. Bubbles rolling down the legs like shimmering pantyhose, perfect segue to the fact that we have explored less than 5% of the ocean. I read that somewhere in something from Penguin Books. There's no more where that came from. Most men cannot survive losing the woman they love. In self-defense, they run their tongues over pointed stones. Lickety-split, they go cutting their losses. I was sunbathing when I heard you going nowhere fast, but by far, I am smarter than I found. The lacuna is the line break. The nadir is the undertow. The paper made of sandbags shrugs the doorway to awe. Erect the tubed gates, beach the whale, salt the mermaid prophet's lips, block the tongue unfurling its majesty. The earth reaps the prophets, it pockets everything, the shell of hope, the peppery scorn, the intent to do right by you. After all, it's selfish for a mother to abandon her baby still nursing, to just take off, skip town for a city with an ocean view. The clouds performed swimmingly as they entered stage left, betraying the sky's hand, a hidden spade, a dugout trick of the trade. The eyes at first light, dressed in suit of milkfish, a good death is what friends will call it. They will chuckle at your last request. A Viking funeral, complete with flaming arrows and drifting ship. Gray goose washes up the unclean. Only the ugly duckling drinks and feels nothing. How empty is your love for me? Your puffed chest sheathed in chainmail, breastplate fashioned from bone. In the genus hippocampus, it is blackmail. It is the male that carries the eggs. My mother body builds on Saturdays before work. The muscles tear to strengthen the bones. My father flaming, bedazzled with rhinestones of insecurity, a leather choker made of guilt wound tightly round his neck. My mother decided to make me an expat. I smoked French cigarettes at just 7 weeks. I let the ashes trail off the balcony of her uterus, her fallopian tubes Parisian croissant, messy flakes devoured in 3 bites. On rainy days, I played Scrabble inside the womb. An E for an eye, a T for a tooth. My parents romanticized the words for expulsion. They made a game of choosing a name for it. My mother, a pop-up book, father eager to flip open the flaps. Would a mother run into a burning house to save her baby? What if the mother is the house on fire? When I was born, a window opened inside my father. The look in his eyes said it all. Without me, you would be nothing. And so it never occurred to either of us to actually get to know each other. This explains why my father cannot see me as an adult, why my mother still feels me kicking. Thank you so much.
I starved myself for 9 nights so that I might swallow you whole. Instead, I watched as they stole your bruises and sucked the blood from your venom. You spoke in apologies for the totems you drugged from the waiting room as they prepared to cleanse your evening skin. The next time you grasp for Sunday shadows and break into your father's house to wash your hands, when that water runs hot, let it. Notice how your reflection in stained glass welcomes the scalding tongue. The pucker of carmine apples, unpicked, left to bake on the branch before bursting on roots, reaching like overgrown fingernails. Steam-soaked blisters cupped to receive his body. You like fire because you say, what keeps you warm at night should always, always be able to kill you if you linger. When the snow melted, I found you in my bed. I coiled around razor wire limbs. Together we tore, making choice cuts, dissecting filament from figment. Peel me as you please. What bleeds was never mine to begin with. You want to know how long I've lingered in your afterglow, gliding in your Moses trail. You want to know if I witnessed the notes held in your nostrils as she passed, fermenting the sweat-stink cocktail that steamed from sun-battered shoulders after a day. Did I notice you daydrift back to that night garden where you first discovered unpicked fruit bleeds the loudest? You want to know if I heard that spark, how even in sleep the hairs on her neck reach magnetic to your dripping finger. I have noticed none of this and more. I tried to die in the desert, but the sand would not take me, just my leg and the love of things loud and sudden. I returned home and sailed for storms, hoping the ocean would do what the blood and brown could not. After many miles, the sounds vanished. Quiet surrounds me. I discover that when the sun sets, it falls into the water, sending waves in all directions as the currents wash away the light, leaving a dark opal to rest beneath the surface, until be rejected back into the dripping sky. A marlin leaps into my boat. It does not flap, but stares until I know what to do. After surrendering my vessel to the fish, I close my eyes and sink. I drink deep. Soon I'm no longer thirsty, as water fills my lungs and begins to leak into the rest of my empty chambers. I place fingers in my mouth and hold it wide. I taste blood and bubbles as I let the ocean fall down my throat. My eyes open to plump toes. Water collects in them, and each in turn stretches and feels like a balloon. My other leg stops at the knee. The sewn-shut scabs burst. My phantom limb drifts deeper until a greedy octopus adds another to his collection. I feel water rushing beneath my skin and fish bumping at the flesh. All around me, the creatures watch as their ocean swirls into my mouth, but they do not turn away. My body grows as the water dwindles. Parrotfish, spotted drums, eels, and manta rays, all manner of crustaceans bounce down my throat. Reefs thrive in my ribs. Schools of dolphins race across my stomach. Whales sing mating hymns around my heart. Piranhas wait in my fingernails. I hold the ocean inside me, and somewhere, the sun. I picked them up in a mattress store, but they said nothing about bringing a mattress. A tall man with skin like old pennies and a wide scar across his stomach carries it by himself. He sets it on top of my car while a woman helps an elderly man into the back seat. She has full lips and a long forehead. Her eyes are dirty and semi-precious. She's the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I feel sick. When I finally look at the old man, I realize that he is probably dead. The tall man sits next to me, and I know to drive. The old man in the seat begins wailing. I'm not sure where the car is going, but no one corrects me as I navigate the city streets, unfurling into the stretches of bisected nature. After a few hours on the highway, I turn on my blinker. I need to get gas, but the tall man finally looks at me. He grimaces, and I see sharpness in his teeth. He thrashes his fists into my instrument panels, breaking the ticks and measurements and numbers. He snaps the blinker level from the wheel and points it forward. I continue to drive. In my rear view mirror, I watch the woman who watches me. The old man has gone silent. She sings every time I find her reflection, following the flicker of my eyes. It embarrasses me at first. The song is peaceful. Dark clouds welcome us. I need to pay attention to the road. Each time I don't, as the sun falls, there is change. By the time I drive into the storm, I see my own reflection echo in her. The wipers stay still. The tall man does not mind. He's at ease in the rain. The old man dies in the back seat. The woman in my skins prepares his body. She digs her fingers in his mouth, removing pieces of soft clay that are passed to the tall man who works them in his hands. We arrive at a great cliff, a slash across the earth. Beyond, the land rises as if taking a deep breath that it cannot let out. Abandoned cars with mattresses on top line the divide for miles. Our engine is smoking. The woman removes the corpse from the back seat. The tall man opens the hood and stokes the embers. At night, we eat on small plates made from the old man's clay, gnawing on bits of his flesh cooked in the sprouting fire. I awake on the mattress. I am naked and watch the tall man and the woman clear their footprints from around the car. From up here, I can see others nesting on mattresses. Watching the horizon, I wait. I know with certainty that I threw her down a well. This well. Dropped her more like. Laid her body on the stony surface, cracked and still slick with hints of October dew, and push-nudged. Her bruised wrist, an overly pointed elbow, let her recently trimmed and more recently tousled hair and body down the well where I hoped it would seek the bottom. That hairless goat, that bloated magpie. I know not what waits for her below, but I know it's still waiting. Pray it is more patient than I, who haven't a coat on this unreasonably frigid morning, which was late evening, well, when I tossed her down. I have not heard a dull thud, a smattering of cracked bones, nor the whoosh splat of meat echoing from the ringed walls around her. That rotting shrew, that twice-smeared armadillo, I have heard, though I wish I hadn't, a slight sigh, a breath of relief, where there should be no air left released. That toothless shark, that turtle-shelled crane, I peer inside, not before looking towards my surroundings for signs of trickery. I toss a pebble after her, and then myself. And now I'm finished.
Oh yeah. If I hop on a foot, it's a good one. Can't be bad, even Grandma just shook some. Electric slide on the side till I rev run. Headphone girl, then walk this way when it's done.
Delores asked me to put a red sweater and a black dress on hold. Together, $35, which is more than what she's ever spent here at once. Delores does not work, but did once for a telemarketing company in her 30s. These days, she calls her ex-husband for $100, opens a credit card that's come in the mail, goes to Neiman Marcus a few times a week for high-end lip colors. Delores comes in sagging, fat, and out of breath, sits in the chair closest to the door, sips her Diet Coke in a way that requires her tongue as well as her greasy red lips to stick out. She's well blushed, wrists green, underneath her assortment of bracelets, hair unwashed. She goes to a salon when she can. Nails done. She asks how I am. She says she's so exhausted, it's senseless. She's called her doctor for a pill to counter her sleeping pill. It makes no sense. She somehow makes a segue into the story about how in college she asked her French teacher out, and he said he'd love to, but he had a barbecue to go to. But he would have loved to. Delores smiles as if he'd said yes, and they were dating all these years, and if she had retained anything she was taught. When Delores smiles, wrinkles pull fast food crumbs to the other side of her face, and she remembers all about the dress and the sweater that won't fit and are too expensive today. Delores thanks me and says she'll stop in tomorrow. Delores makes a purchase, frequently enough to keep a subscription to having some company. 1. I bought a pair of black boots for €32. I wanted to walk the cobblestone streets and still be appealing in heels. I wanted to be ready to meet a man. Who doesn't want to be ready to meet someone? The man I met was short. 2. I bought a water bottle because I walked to work last summer. The brand is Stanley. The bottle is half aluminum, half plastic, and it comes apart for sharing. I drive to work now, and named my Grand Am Stanley. One refuels me, I refuel the other. 3. My oldest possession is a silk scarf. My sister gave it to me to wrap my permed hair in at night. It was the last part of my nighttime beauty routine, and I never wanted to be caught dead wearing it. The public wouldn't understand a woman and her headscarf. I don't have hair anymore. Who is enough to see my real eyebrows? 4. 8 years after logging into Twitter, and I still don't know any of my followers. I gain some and lose them because of expectations. I'm okay with it, because you can't please everyone all the time. Not even God cares about that. In my Gmail, there are drafts to God, but I don't think he has an account. We were 2 little girls, me at 6 and you 8, not wanting to be in heat. The buttons we tried gave a troubling omen. There was nothing on TV. We stuck our fingers in the couch for change, to feel able. We pulled out a small package. We opened it up, and I waited for you to tell me what it was. You said, "What is this?" And I waited for you to tell me. But then you said, "Maybe it's Dad's." The object was long, 2 tubes, one smaller and ready to push itself into the other, with star-shaped slits at the tip, and a string dangling on the other side. I asked, "Is he sick?" How did we know it was for the adult body? We slid the small tube into the larger tube, which then released a clean stick of cotton. You didn't know. I didn't know. So our unease became terror. You laughed out of confusion. I tensed. A widow waits for her beloved and blind dog to die, so she can move to Italy, to be with an old boyfriend, and stepmother his Italian children, because her own don't need her as much, not like they did when they were nearly the size of her Akita, named Akita. Her dog is not going to die anytime soon. Her stink somehow getting stronger. Her bark still noise on all 4 floors. Akita sleeps at the front door, waiting for a dead man who shot himself 5 years ago on this porch. Akita always hears footsteps, so she warns her widow, who used to say her husband died from cancer, until she started getting rid of extra bowls, books, small guitars, camping equipment, towels, bikes, night lights, chairs, pots, plants, her late husband's books, clippers, shirts, mugs, and his persuasion earned Akita, who isn't going to shut up anytime soon. All right, well, thank you. That's all.
Let me rinse your blue hair, cut your bleach tips, and butter your scalp with balm from the pharmacy. They'll call the cops if you show, so I'll foot the bill. I'll drive the Lincoln since it's past 10:30. I'll clean the pillow you ruined writing violets. Purple martins with dye and restlessness. The landscape of your sleep mapped here. Hang on to one of these. Honor it like a flag and burn it when you turn 21. These love letters won't mean much now. Sorry in advance for the bloody seam on your left thigh. See how it winds like a garden snake halved with a hoe. Sorry for how badly it hurts to watch the next one in the rear view. I don't want to give anything away, but here's a pencil and some paper. Here's a Kleenex box and a laptop full of porn. I recommend the chicken ginger. Let me walk you to your car. You're drunk. Where are your keys? Later, when you write all this down, these are narcissus. These are egrets. The word you're looking for is pobrecita. The phrase you mean to write is, I know now I will love, which isn't false, but let's get you presentable, boy, because we only have 12 years to break you open, leave you in a ditch somewhere, and see what crawls out. The night after I was diagnosed, I dreamed I was jettisoned into space, where, mysteriously alive, I passed prolonged time, so many years, swimming, unable to breathe or to record the downpour of diamonds on Neptune, Io's restless tides, mostly the limitless pitch beyond Ceres. I remember your mother's voice calling me back to earth, back to die indentured to my own gravity, my native darkness, my street, our house, how to come home, I asked myself. Too far in this one direction, powerless to stop this pull down toward whatever. I can't say I cared. Imagine our neighbors, the voice said, their empty studies, how they would draw open their windows, smoke close. Think of the sweet odor, how it must have felt to touch those red dwarfs to their lips, though I knew those lights, once they reached me, were already extinguished. You'll need dollar store flip-flops. The shabbier, the better. You'll need a black Glad, a busted porch light. You'll want to find char on the cutlets. So burner to hide. Before you step onto the porch, listen to it simper. The cicadas' fulmination like meat spitting in cast iron. Their mallets planishing an unseen anvil. You'll want to savor this because what follows is hell. Descending, elbow to cement, toenails wrenched on the rails, down to the frozen bottom, and nothing to do there but wail to the 1 a.m. stars who might have been regal, but for this wound you are Sisyphus, shoving the cumbersome boulder of your body against the iron rail. What a relief, somehow, to watch bruises fan out like ink on rice paper. Finally, a pain you can finger. Think of your father, miles away, a maze of cables and drips. A swell with fluid no doctor can show you, can't spoon out, and if you really listen, they are not mallets, but a heart measure that you monitor against your own and must somehow live on, rise up, and ascend. On August 5th, 2012, white supremacist Wade Michael Page entered a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Wade killed 6 members of the temple before police were able to respond. In the gun battle that followed, Wade injured an officer before fatally shooting himself in the head. There's a picture of me Tracy took on the rocks in Whitefish Bay. It's like I'm walking on the ivory water past the darkest part of the corona, settling on the gnash of waves. The waves are muted and methodical, like a child pushing a prayer from his breath to his palm. I set the picture down. Since the groundskeepers reached the field north of town, I hear a din of cicadas. Their thrum, a subtle crack in the silence my parents keep. My job is to listen to the insects, to the gunfire from the alley where boys stipple Sprite bottles. Stretchers pass on the news. One policeman stops, takes off his helmet. The others turn. In the photo, it looks like I want to step over the horizon with its last light unfolding, but I would miss the babble of water, the yips of my dog racing across a field. I don't know. Do I want the strength to accept what Job had to, what God gives back? The new wife's soft hands, the children listening for the trample of their father's herd. At night, they collect the lives of insects in jars. They spread their bodies on the meadow, laying their ears to the dirt. The wasp nest the drones built is finished, and at night I hear them suckling nectar and hemolymph from victims. I strip the porch boards, fumigate, Pyrethrin, which scorches innards, rages like a house fire before it kills. They can all burn, I tell Tom. Gehenna, a valley where the sacrificed are stacked, where I ferry the nest after I've turned it to a gray tomb safe for children. I want to be bigger. Unconscionable life, where I must kill more than I can save. I want to love you. You and Rob Bell, who wrote that Gandhi wasn't in hell. 1,000 parishioners left his church after. An article said people got uncomfortable with the idea others didn't have to suffer when they should suffer, even if it's horribly with extreme instruments of torture for good. We need a God capable of wrath, one pastor wrote, as if God were his echo. The article doesn't indicate what the pastor did after this, but I imagine him turning from presbytery to nave, reluctantly into the spring where ferns and flowers, the color of persimmons, swash the lawn. He thought how greedy the flowers looked, jockeying for an angle on unclouded sky. Yes, and how survival made them cruel at times. Thick malaise coming, anvil clouds coaxed into obscurity. I have coveted and I have been cruelly vengeful, Lord. But you are much larger, much kinder than me. You can be like the clouds, who when they rain sound like wings beating and beating the dark. Some believe the hill is Golgotha, the trees, 2 thieves and a god. Then who are the fisherman and his wife? Peasants who bowed to cairns and Gobi, idols of thrashing fish. Or it's Saskia with Rembrandt patiently awaiting what's pulled from the riverine darkness. I imagine husband and wife seated before kindling. They're so small, Lydia, amidst the magnanimity of the flats, the fingerprint sky smothered by steam. As I turn the print, your hair hangs lithe as the lines of Rembrandt's Echoppe. A sliced lemon, almond light dapple the cutting board. There are roses, rain smoking from the forest, but not one of the maples resembles a cross. No messiahs, no thieves, just what asks to be stolen, what demands. Thanks, guys.
Begin with the blackbirds you shot for menacing the finches. Begin with your suitcase full of maps. Begin with the man who knocked on your door and said the world was ending. He hung your sheets on the line, gathered squash from your garden, kissed you on the porch, but you wouldn't let him save you. Don't begin with the black bear that came down from the mountain to steal your goat. Begin with the orange kite you fly each spring. Begin with the cocoon that shakes in your hand when you speak to it. Begin by telling someone about the man who raped you and the woman who held you down. Begin with the deer you found, field-dressed and hanging from the arbor gate, mistletoe pinned to its cheek, a note tied around its neck that read, "To help you survive the winter." I'll not kiss your lion limb, not lap back the rattle in my ribs like a lone pill gone to powder in an orange plastic bottle, not sing any more of the wretch and wrestle. No more ministers to drive words through my wrists and leave me for the patient circles of scavengers. No, you didn't kill me. Not because some days, yes, I wished for it, but chose a different courage. I stopped asking the mirror for a dream and opening it like a door. I wished to welcome back feeling, that whole mansion of trembling rooms, wished to break every window, let the light storm through. On my knees, I wished for tempest, for rack and screw. I asked for churchless pleasures to disturb my numb comfort, wanted lick and wallow, wished to swallow the laugh out of a child's mouth, and, my God, wished for even the shame of an apple. Now my wishes are down to 2, staying alive and wanting to. The last time I left your house, I saw a moth on the black skin of a puddle, ruining herself on the moon's reflection. Dear Sphinx hawk moth I mistook for a hummingbird among the grapes, darling metaphor at my feet, damn fool. The water in me reached out for itself, which is the way of all good mirrors. It wanted its nest of stone. An hour before, we'd scratched your ceiling into snow, dusted the blanket fort where we held each other and did the quiet work of intimacy and then the siren work of pleasure as the sheets fell down around us. I felt the dark coin of blood wish itself onto white cotton. I hadn't known the meaning of missing, though lost was always clear. I gave your ghost 10 minutes to ache in me. It took my throat. I took the wings from the moth. They were the soft, dishonest brown of my eyes. They wanted to belong to me. You must remember, though you weren't there, it was the night you said sloth was not a vice of laziness, but the refusal to seek God. The moth's furred body twitched in my palm, drew her legs closer. My hands, an unclosed envelope, a failed prayer. She'd spent herself on the image of her desire, bright as a communion plate. When I left her wingless body on the wet moon, I wanted her alive. I envied her suffering. Though thought she got what she wanted, not longing, not regret, but fulfillment, a whole sky, nothing in the end but light flooding into her. If you want to fall in love again, meet me in the mint field under a black umbrella. Half your memories wait there in the shallow burial of a cigar box labeled by once and future homecoming. The prairie and its empire of grasses aged from green to champagne, and my pupils are useless in this biblical light. A stray wandered through the back door I left open. I gave it your middle name, picked it up by its neck. Ticks studded its ribs like proofless rubies. I do that a lot now, leaving doors open. See how little I've changed? I still cover the eastern windows with masking tape X's in every storm. Once, I was in love with leaving, with wearing a dress with 42 white buttons down the back. Now I know the German name for the counterfeit darkness you see when you close your eyes translates to own light. When I press my eyelids looking for it, red spreads its knowing stain, the way the oil in our fingertips once did, darkening the pages of hand-me-down erotica as we sucked each other's toes. The months after you left, fantasy was a form of injury. I cataloged each what-if in cursive to try and wish my way across the thin distance between faith and waiting. Truth is, I put up with your bad waltzing because it made you close enough to kiss, to push the pin in your boutonniere into your breastbone. I think I might be in love again, this time with the finch pilfering purple coneflower seeds in my garden. You loved once the prayer in me where a prayer shouldn't be, the crisis with a theme. The way I needed breath into the shape of you, how your absence reefs my skin, how you tailored your sentences to almost but not quite reach the floor. The parts of me that ache for you lately are incus, malleus, stapes, and when I whisper, stay, to the scentless side of the bed, you almost do, or your voice does. My heart in its bone kennel shaking, convinced it can hear you from that far, from here, from this home I cannot live in or leave. Let me not call it denial anymore. Let me name the miles between his mouth and mine temporary as season, and then let it be spring and bruiseless again, rank as geraniums in the noon heat, astonished as skin before blood slips like a memory across the distance of a wound. Like you, I have let myself belong to someone who stood on a bridge and told me he'd never leave 2 days before he did. But who doesn't ask for a lie when the air heaves unsweet and green with a stalled rain and a sky blue as a new world? Let me not call it bargaining anymore and say a wish is the daughter of longing, natural consequence, youngest shame, oldest hunger. Let me come to the altar of each noun and offer to distance burnt roses and an eastern wind, to time the black hourglass and the gold of a goat's eye, to greed my tongue, rotten garnets scabbed at its root. But not my vocal cords, the pearl of each blister hurting its sister, the sternum burn of that scream, its painful goodness, when you tell me the man who left me held our ashen love and accepted its death, but I kept on trying to administer CPR. I put out a cigarette on an apple, bend it into an italic S in the skin. I bite the flesh where I burned it. taste the pink and gray wind of April when Kansas ranchers drip-torch the prairie. Maybe when he said always he meant asleep like honey, new as a crocus, as far from now as the ghost that sank between us like a promise or a knife. Let me call it then or never, or accept that a heart heals like a grave. Let the blue stem and switchgrass insist until I rise, until I call myself 1,000 yeses, until it is true. Thanks.